October 17th, 1989, 5:04 p.m. Millions watched the World Series until the ground roared beneath them. In just 15 seconds, bridges broke, buildings fell, and the game disappeared from the screen. This was no ordinary earthquake. It was a moment that stopped California cold. The date was October 17th, 1989. The sun was dipping low over San Francisco Bay, casting a golden glow on the city's bridges and hills. It was the perfect autumn evening for baseball, Game 3 of the World Series, a historic Battle of the Bay between the San Francisco Giants and the Oakland Athletics. Across California, families gathered in living rooms, sports bars overflowed with fans, and the electric buzz of excitement filled the air. At 5:04 p.m., millions of eyes were fixed on the television. The broadcast cut to Candlestick Park, where tens of thousands of fans packed the stands. And then, the screen flickered. The cameras shook violently. In that moment, the epicenter, deep in the Santa Cruz Mountains, near Loma Prieta Peak, unleashed its fury. The quake lasted only 15 seconds, but its power tore through the Bay Area, collapsing highways, snapping bridges, and plunging entire neighborhoods into darkness. Before that evening was over, 63 people would be dead, thousands injured, and a city forever changed. In the hours before the earthquake, the Bay Area was alive with the rhythm of an ordinary Tuesday. Office workers poured out of downtown buildings, eager to get home in time for the game. The streets were busy but calm, filled with the hum of conversation, car radios tuned to pre-game commentary, and the smell of food drifting from local diners. At Candlestick Park, fans in team colors filled the stands, waving banners and snapping photos. Vendors shouted over the crowd, selling hot dogs and peanuts. The energy was electric, but it was the kind of joy that felt safe and familiar, a shared ritual in a baseball-loving city. In neighborhoods across San Francisco, parents called their children in for dinner, couples settled onto couches, and bartenders poured another round for regulars. The Bay Bridge stood proud against the setting sun, a symbol of connection between the cities on either side. No one noticed the subtle shifts deep underground. No one felt the tension building along the San Andreas Fault, and no one imagined that, in just minutes, their world would be ripped apart. At exactly 5:04 p.m., the first tremor rolled beneath the Bay Area. It felt like a truck rumbling past, nothing alarming. But within seconds, the shaking intensified. Windows rattled, light poles swayed. Then came the roar, a deep, thunderous growl from the earth itself. In Candlestick Park, the stadium trembled as fans clutched their seats. The broadcast cameras jolted violently before cutting to static. Across the city, shelves toppled, glass shattered, and walls cracked. On the Cypress Street Viaduct, the unthinkable happened. The upper deck of the freeway collapsed onto the lower, crushing cars trapped beneath. The Bay Bridge suffered a massive break in its upper deck, halting all traffic in an instant. In Oakland and San Francisco, power failed, plunging neighborhoods into sudden darkness. Sirens began to wail, mixing with the cries of people searching for loved ones. It lasted just 15 seconds. Yet in that brief span, lives were changed forever. The Loma Prieta earthquake had struck with brutal force, and the Bay Area would never be the same again. When the shaking stopped, an eerie silence fell, broken only by the sound of alarms and distant screams. People stumbled out of buildings, some injured, others in shock, all searching for loved ones. Dust hung in the air, mingling with the smell of gas leaks and burning debris. On the Cypress Street Viaduct, survivors crawled from crushed cars, calling out for help. Rescue workers, firefighters, and ordinary citizens climbed the wreckage with bare hands, pulling strangers to safety. In the Marina District, fires erupted as broken gas lines ignited, forcing residents to flee their homes. Across the Bay Bridge, abandoned cars sat motionless, their drivers having fled on foot. Hospitals overflowed within hours, and emergency crews raced to reach trapped victims before aftershocks could bring more structures down. In the darkness of power outages, neighborhoods relied on flashlights and candles. Strangers became rescuers, and streets turned into makeshift triage centers. The scale of the disaster was becoming clear. In just minutes, San Francisco's familiar skyline had been scarred, and the lives of thousands had been thrown into chaos. The fight to save lives had only just begun. By the time the fires were contained and the last survivors pulled from the rubble, the true scale of the disaster was staggering. 63 lives had been lost. More than 3,700 people were injured. Over 12,000 were left without homes. Entire blocks lay in ruins, and the economic cost would exceed $6 billion, a devastating figure for 1989. The images of the collapsed Cypress Street Viaduct and the broken Bay Bridge became symbols of the quake's destruction. But they also served as a wake-up call. Engineers and city planners began a massive overhaul of building codes, demanding stronger seismic safety standards. Bridges were retrofitted, older structures reinforced, and emergency response systems upgraded. The quake also inspired new technology for earthquake detection and public alert systems, aiming to give people precious seconds to act before the ground begins to shake. While the scars on the city slowly healed, the memory of Loma Prieta remained. It was a lesson written in concrete and steel. The earth will move again, and the best way to survive is to be ready when it does. The Loma Prieta earthquake lasted just 15 seconds, but its echoes have carried through decades. For those who lived it, the memories remain sharp: the sound of twisting metal, the sight of crumbling streets, the fear in the eyes of neighbors. For others, it stands as a chapter in history that shaped the Bay Area's identity. It was a reminder that in a single moment, everything familiar can be taken away. Homes, landmarks, even the sense of safety we take for granted, all can vanish in the time it takes to draw a breath. But it was also a story of resilience. Strangers became rescuers, communities rebuilt, and the city rose again from the ruins. Out of tragedy came unity, and out of loss came a renewed determination to face the future prepared. Today, the Bay Area stands stronger, but the ground beneath it has not changed. One day, it will move again. And when it does, the lessons of Loma Prieta will be the difference between chaos and survival. Remember this day, not only for what was lost, but for what it taught us all.